Mochav achaka chochal. Right at the top of Lam Beis Merav. Mochav achaka chochal. If somebody was moichel, the meaning that the Kohen was mochel the truma. Now this is talking about a case where somebody already eaten truma improperly, and he set aside the kernel chumash for it, and then he ate it again, right? But he ate it again after the Kohen was moichel. The Kohen said, "Hey, you keep it for yourself." So, Pluto Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish. There's machlokas Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shimon Lakish. What happens next? The spalgu, and they had a machlokas like this: Gazal truma mishal avi imo Kohen umeis. A Yisrael who stole truma from his grandfather, who was a Kohen, right, his mother's father, and then the grandfather dropped dead, and he inherited. Somehow there were no other heirs. He inherited the grandfather. Rabbi Yochanan Mishalim Shevet. Rabbi Yochanan says he pays the shevet, meaning even though technically speaking he inherited the truma, he can't keep it. He's got to pay out truma to somebody else. Reish Lakish Amar Mishalim Latzmo. Shlakish said he pays to himself. In other words, he gets to keep it. So the same thing by Mochav Achaka Chochal, if the Kohen was Mochel the payment and then the guy ate it, so then the same machlokas would apply. The question is whether he has to pay to the Kohen or not. It's going to be the same machlokas. Rabbi Yochanan would say he has to pay to a Kohen because he ate truma and he's not supposed to. I'm going to let me speak about that in a minute, or so less than a minute. Shlaki says he pays for himself, meaning he gets to keep it. Now the chomesh, however, we're going to see later in the parak, is regardless. Chomesh is like a korban; it's kapara money. So since kapara money, even if you get to keep the keren, the principal, the chomesh you got to pay out. That's not the subject of discussion here. It's only the principle. The issue is whether you, as Yisrael, can inherit or stake a claim as a result of mechila to the principle. But chomesh you must always pay. The fifth is always kapara money, and that has to be paid out regardless. Okay, that's not up for discussion right now. Rabbi Yonah. Rabbi Yonah said, "Kachia meishiv Reish Lakish Rabbi Yochanan." This is how Reish Lakish would respond to Rabbi Yochanan. Al daitcha the Tamar Mishal Mashev. The point to you says that there's a concept that you always have to pay money to the tribe of Kohanim regardless. Then we learn later. We'll see later this evening. If you steal truma which belongs to hekdesh and you consume it, mishalim shnei chomashim, you pay 2/5. Now this is going to be a topic later on whether it's actually 2/5 or not. But be that as it may, right now it seems that you pay 2/5, one for truma because truma requires 1/5, and the other for me'ilah because me'ilah requires 1/5. So it's truma which belong to hekdesh. Got a double whammy. You got to pay keren plus keren plus 2 chomshin. Now Reish Lakish asks, "Vishalim shloisha." Reish Lakish says, "According to you, I have a third chomesh." This is a very lumdisha question. Reish Lakish says like this: Look, according to Rabbi Yochanan, if a guy eats truma, even if the truma belonged to no Kohen, belonged to hekdesh, still hypothetically, according to Rabbi Yochanan, the tashlumin must then be made to the tribe of Kohanim. That's what Rabbi Yochanan said previously. If your grandfather's truma, which you inherited, you still have to pay out money to the tribe of Kohanim. That means that there's a claim which Kohanim have. Even though the truma belongs here to hekdesh, the Kohanim can claim the payment directed to them. So therefore, says Rabbi Yochanan, it's hypothetically conceivable that there should be a third payment here. What would be the third payment? Let's say the guy who ate the truma of hekdesh then took a false oath. He was nishbal sheker. He said the Kohanim came, the Kohanim Inc. came. They sent a lawyer. The lawyer sued and said, "You owe us truma." And the guy lied. He took an oath and he lied and said, "I don't owe you anything." Then it turned out he was lying. So halacha is that a shvua sheker, you bring a keren v'chomesh. You bring the principal plus a chomesh. So here too, they should have to pay the person who ate the truma of hekdesh and then lied under oath should have to pay an additional chomesh, one to hekdesh, one to the Kohanim, and an additional one for having laws to take a shvua sheker. Says according to me, it's not difficult because I hold that the Kohanim don't necessarily have a claim. Remember, Reish Lakish said. I say, according to Reish Lakish said it's not difficult to me because I hold the Kohanim don't necessarily have a claim. The proof of the pudding is the case where he inherited the grandfather. We inherited the grandfather, so then I say, if he ate it, he doesn't have to pay out the principal because it belonged to him. Well, he has to pay out the 5th. So he holds that the Kohanim don't have any inherent claim. So therefore there's nobody to whom to take a shvuah, because you don't make a shvuah to hektish. You only make a shvuah to human beings. But according to you, Rabbi Yochanan, that there's an inherent claim which the Kohanim have on the Truma, so there should be a third Chomesh, the Chomesh for Shvuas Sheker, right? That's conceivable as well. So Vishalim Shloisha, Rabbi Yasser, B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan said, HaTorah Omra Bo. So Rabbi Yasser name Rabbi Yochanan responded that the Torah said Bo, the word Bo. Yotzi de Gzela. With one payment, you're Yotzi your Chiv of Gzela. There's a cryptic answer. It's not even clear Lamaskana what it means, but the Gemara is going to explain it in a little detail in a few lines. Amalei Rabbi Zila Rabasi. Rabbi Zila said to Rabasi, Tarti Milan Amri Rishem Rabbi Yochanan. You said Rabbi Yasa is Rabbi Yasi, right? Yasa is his Yerushalmi name, Asi is his Bavli name. Rabbi Zir said to Rabbi Yasi, Tarti Milin Omrim B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan. You said two things in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. V'lei Satun Omrim Len, and you never said them, meaning you never explained them. Okay? And you stated them, you never explained them. Amr B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan, you said in the name Rabbi Yochanan, Yotza B'Yidei Gzela, that you Yotza your Gzela with one chav, with one payment. V'lei Satun Omrim, you never explained what you meant by that. Amr B'Shem Rabbi Yochanan said in the name Rabbi Yochanan another time, by a Porah Aduma, the Mokum Shchitas Sham Teis Reifosa. The place you shech, the day you should burn it. V'lei Satun Omrim. And he never said, Ma'u Kadon, what's going on there? So says the Gemara, I'll tell you. Rabbi Yasi, it seems, responds. I'll explain both of them. V'nasa the Kohen is a Kodesh. Once you give the Kohen the Kodesh, became a Shenosnu Lo Yotzi Yedei Gzela. In other words, it's unclear to me 100% what it means, but the gist of it is that once you make a payment to the Kohen for the Truma, that's all you have to make. And there's no additional payment for Shvuah Sheker. So Gzera Sakosov, one payment. Says Bo, a single payment. That's it. And therefore the Chomesh which you give for the Truma, that supersedes any additional Chumashim which you might give, including a Chomesh for Shvuah Sheker. Okay? The extra word Bo teaches us that.
So that should also incorporate the Me'ilah too.
Well, that we'll get to later in the parak. That's correct. You're right. We're going to get that later on. In fact, that will be discussed. Okay? Later tonight. Rabbi Lezer, a few minutes. Rabbi Lezer Shem Rabbi Yeshua says, and what's the other thing about Paraduma? So, Al Pirsha, turning the page, Yisrof. On its refuse, you should burn it. What does it mean on its refuse? What is refuse? What are we talking about? Rabbi Yerushalmi Rabbi Ami says no, that's not the way to darshan. The way to darshan is b'makom prishasa mechaim, in the place where it departed this world, right? Prishasa, where it departed. So makom prishasa mechaim, sham teisrefasa, that's who you burn it. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan Kerebi. Rabbi Yochanan holds like Rebbe. Now, Rebbe held in the previous Gemara, which we didn't see this evening, that the matana, the giving to the Kohanim of the payment, the reimbursement for the Truma, is what is motzi you your chiv, what exempts you from your obligation. Reish Lakish holds Rabbi Lezer Rabbi Shimon that just separating it exempts you from your obligation. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yochanan, you have to actually give the Kohanim. You have to deliver it to them. According to Reish Lakish, all you have to do is set it aside. You don't have to actually have to deliver them, and therefore we had the case by the grandfather who died, and you inherit it. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, you still have to give Kohanim the payment. According to Rabbi Reish Lakish, you get to set aside the payment, keep it for yourself, again, apart from the Chomesh. Rabbi Bud Barchia. Reish Lakish Karebi. No, I can even say the Reish Lakish holds like Rebbe. That setting it aside is not sufficient, you have to give it. However, not all the time. Ubilvad, when did Rebbe say this? Only b'davar shu zakuk litno l'kohen. Only is something which you must give to the kohen. Avodavar sheinu zakuk l'kohen, but something which you're not required to the kohen. Av Rebbe bodei behu. Even Rebbe concedes the point in those things that setting aside is sufficient. What's a case of this ilk? So kahada masnisa. You know the word kahada? Yeah. Kahada masnisa, like that brisa. What is the brisa? Hivish pidyon peter chamor. Umeis. You set aside a goat or a sheep in lieu of your firstborn donkey. Then the goat or sheep dies. The goat or sheep kicks the bucket before you manage to give it to the Kohen. Rabbi Lezer says you have to reimburse the Kohen for the dead goat. You have to give the Kohen another dead goat as a substitute. Even though the goat has no kedusha, we know Pichim Petach Hamor is no kedusha. It's not sacred at all. But you have to reimburse the Kohen for it. Kechamesh sloim shoben. Just like Pidyon Haben. Pidyon Haben, if you set aside 5 sloim and didn't give it to Kohen, it doesn't work. In order for Pidyon Haben to work, it has to be given, actually delivered in the transaction to the Kohen himself. Okay? So that's a case where we see it must be delivered. That's a case where Rebbe would say, matno so. You actually have it to give it to a Kohen in order to work. If you don't give it over to the Kohen, it doesn't work. It says you're not chayiv in achrayis. You're not chayiv in achrayis of Pidyon Petach Hamor. In this respect, it's not like Pidyon Haben, but rather Pidyon Meiser Sheni. If you redeem Meiser Sheni and then lose the money which you set aside for the Meiser Sheni, it's okay. You don't have to make restitution to Meiser Sheni, take additional funds up to Yerushalmi in lieu of the stuff you lost, and eat special Yerushalmi with that. That you don't have to do. So Pidyon Meiser Sheni is a case where you don't have to make additional restitution. That's a case where the hafrosha is sufficient. You don't need the matana. So even Rebbe would concede there are only certain cases, and Pidyon Petach Hamor is the subject of machlokas. What it's similar to, there are only certain cases where you have to make restitution, not all cases. Okay? Umodi Rabbi Lezer Repitri Chamorim, when even Rabbi Lezer concedes the point by a Petach Hamor shenaflu lo mi beis avi imo Kohen, which felt him as a Yerusha from his grandfather who was a Kohen. Became when she frishon kochu. There, once you set aside the goat, you don't have to deliver the goat, because who do you have to deliver the goat to? A Kohen. But here, you inherited a Kohen. In other words, the Petach Hamors were inherited. You inherited by the Kohen. So therefore, you inherited from your grandfather for a. Well, the case is like this. Let me just make sure I get this right. This is talking about a case where the Petach Hamors were born in the hands of Yisrael. And they were chayiv and Pidyon. And somehow they came to the hands of a Kohen before they were redeemed. And now the Kohen has to redeem them. But if the Kohen redeems them, he gets to keep the goat. So now before the Kohen manages to redeem them, he dies. And now his Yisrael grandson inherits these Chamorim, which have a chiyuv Pidyon Petach Hamor on them, right? So he has to set aside a goat. His grandfather would have had to also. So he has to set aside a goat. But just like his grandfather would have set aside a goat and kept the goat, so do he gets to keep the goat. Okay, and that's what it means. He kochu, not literally sacred, because there's no sanctity here. We're dealing with Pidyon Petach Hamor. There's no sanctity to the goat which is set aside. But the meaning is that in this case, it suffices to set it aside. Even here, everybody agrees you don't need matana. When you need matana? Giving it when it's Yisrael who's actually being paid his own Petach Hamors. But here, where at some point it belonged to a Kohen, so then already there's no need for matana, because it's as if the matana already took place, even though it didn't actually take place, because the Kohen grandfather died before he managed to set aside the proper goat. But it's as if the goat was set aside, and therefore no additional hafrosha matana is required. Okay, just hafrosha. So the bottom line, after all this is said and done, is that Rish Lakish will claim that according to Rebbe, you don't always need matana. Sometimes hafrosha suffices, and it depends what scenario it's dealing with. Even according to Rebbe, right, he would say that when do you need matana? In the case where you had truma, which you ate, which then you have to make restitution for. There, says Rish Lakish, you know what, I personally might hold you don't even need matana in that case. Or even in that case might be afrosha. But even according to Rebbe holds you need matana, only in that case you need matana. But in the case which I was discussing before and argued with Rabbi Yochanan, where you inherited your grandfather who was a Kohen, right? And then you ate the truma, which you inherited from your grandfather. So even in that case, even Rebbe concedes to me that no matana is required. Why? Because since I ate truma, which in essence I had already inherited, I don't have to give it over. I just set it aside, I mafresh it, and then get to keep it myself. It's Rabbi Yochanan who argues, not Rebbe. Rebbe would concede the point to me. So Rabbi Yochanan argues and says that even in such case, where you inherit your grandfather as a Kohen, you get the truma and you eat it, you have to not just be mafresh, but even give the restitution to some other Kohen. And remember, that's because Rabbi Yochanan knows that the tribe of Kohanim have a claim. Reish Lakish refuses to concede that Rebbe agrees to that point. Okay? Tanya. Let's go weiter. Achal Trumas Chaver. If you eat the truma which belongs to a Chaver, a Kohen who's a Chaver, Mishlayim l'Chaver. You give the Kohen who's a Chaver, the truma has restitution. Chaver means it's a Talmud Chacham. Trumas Ha'aretz. What if you ate truma which belongs to an Ha'aretz? So Mishlayim l'Ha'aretz, you should pay the Ha'aretz. Says, well, wait. You're not allowed to do that. You can't give truma Torah to an Ha'aretz because we're afraid it's going to be metameit. Ketzerosa. So what do? No saying shteim l'koyin chaver. If you ate, let's say, you ate two the truma of a chaver and the truma of a Ha'aretz, right? So you give the tashlumin, both of them, to the Kohen who's the chaver. It's not right, because you ate the truma which belongs to Ruvain Ha'aretz. You should have to make restitution to him, right? So it says more of a noitel me'achas man, v'nosin l'kohen Ha'aretz. Then you take the value of one of the trumas and you give it to Ha'aretz. In other words, you ask the Kohen to whom you gave it to. But you giving a Kohen, you ate a portion of truma from Ruvain Ha'aretz, another portion of truma from Shimon Talmud Chacham. So now you give both portions to Shimon Talmud Chacham, plus the two chomishes, obviously, and then you buy you Shimon Talmud Chacham. You pay you take from him. He pays you for the truma which you would have given to Ruvain Ha'aretz, and then you give that money to Ruvain Ha'aretz. Okay, you don't give him the truma itself. You give him money which corresponds to the value of that truma. Okay, so that way he's never actually using stuff for truma purposes, which is bona fide truma, which he could be matame as a result.
What about just a standard case where you're not eating his truma, but you're just giving Ruvain Ha'aretz, who's a Kohen, truma?
You're not allowed to. Now let's give a Kohen Ha'aretz truma. You have to avoid it. Give him chulin. You can't give him truma. Okay? Rabbi Boom Brachia, because they're afraid he's matameit. Rabbi Boom Brachia says, Rabbi Boom Brachia, Omar Kumei Rabbi Shimon Lakish, it says in front of Rabbi Shimon Lakish, Ask you command Omar Hafroshoso Mikadoshoso. That's good according to the opinion which says that Afrosha is Mekadosh it. Because you were mafresh it for the purpose of the Ha'aretz. But Ram command Omar Matnoso Mikadoshoso, but according to the opinion which holds that you have to actually give it, not like Rish Lakish, but like Rabbi Yochanan, below Kain Ein Otzarech Zchia, don't you have to give it to the Ha'aretz? So I wasn't aware of this. It seems like the halacha is that you really must give it to the Kohen from whom you stole it. But it's not just restitution to Kohanim Inc. It's restitution to Kohanim Inc. where the truma didn't belong to any specific Kohen, where it belonged, where you hadn't yet given it, or where it belonged to Hekdesh, or whatever the case may be. But where you actually took the truma of Ruvain Ha'aretz and ate it, you got to make restitution to Ruvain Ha'aretz. Not to making restitution to Shimon Talmud Chacham doesn't do you any good. So that's what you gotta give it to him. How are you giving it to him? So says the Gemara, Amar Lahen. So Reish Lakish said, according to Rabbi Yochanan, says you have to actually give it. B'mizaka de'acher. You have to you give it to Shimon Talmud Chacham, and you say here be zoicha in this for Ruvain Ha'aretz. So he's zoich in it. But it never actually goes to Ruvain Ha'aretz, right? It's a legal loophole, right? So Shimon is zoicha for Ruvain, but then Shimon gives you money corresponding to that, and that's what you give to Ruvain. And I guess Ruvain is appeased by this. Okay? All right. That's it for that sugya. Let's go to the next Mishnah. Oh, sorry. Skipped.
There's 2 lines here.
Oh.
Unless we're going back.
I think we're going back. Yeah, back to the Mishnah. Halach Aleph. Bas Yisrael. By the little Vav. See by the little Vav? On Laman Aleph, Laman Aleph. It's 3, 6, 7 lines down from the top of the page. Cool case. A girl ate truma. Needless to say, she was frightened by the prospect. She immediately went and married a Kohen. So what does she do? She has to make restitution. It was truma which never belonged to any specific Kohen which she ate. So again, Kohanim Inc. in that case have no claim on this, so she pays the Keren HaChomish to herself. Why? Because now she has the status of a Kohen, Mrs. Kohen. If, however, Truma Shesachaba Kohen Achla, the Truma should already belong to a specific Kohen, and we just learned that has to go back to that Kohen, right? Mishlem is Keren L'Bailim, then she gives the Keren, the principal, to that owner, V'chomish L'Atzmo. But the Chomesh gets to keep. Because remember, we said the Chomesh is separate. Chomesh is not a restitution to that individual, but like a korban, kapara money. Well, she can eat herself, or eat her own kapara gelt, right? Because she herself is now Mrs. Cohen. So therefore, she doesn't have to give that to the Cohen from whom she took the original food.
Is Chomesh a kapara or a
It's a
knas?
knas, isn't it?
It's a knas, but it's a knas, there's a kapara.
No, there's a machlokas in the Gemara whether knas is kapara or knas is something else.
I don't know for sure. I was assuming it was a kapara, but I can't tell you with any degree of certainty, although I know he speaks about it somewhere. Let me see if I can find it.
Before it is a knas.
Chomesh is a knas.
Yeah, chomish.
Yeah.
In other,
That's why I'm not sure that it's a kapara.
Yeah, it's just if it's a fine, it certainly would have the same parameters, and maybe it would even clear better on this
the
one.
distinction. It seems the same.
A knas is not necessarily a kapara. Knas is not intended to have the same effect as a korban. It's just to make life miserable.
So it's a knas?
Yeah.
So it's a knas. I mean, if that's a knas,
Oh, and I could
kapara is not intended to make life miserable. It's actually to bring you
makes
to
you
the
a lot
level.
better.
Yeah.
He's supposed to bring you back into the
Sounds you of
community.
a sin.
I don't know. We haven't seen yet what exactly it is, so I can't say. I don't know.
Why does she keep the chomish? Why doesn't she have to give it to her husband?
Oh, it's because she can accept truma. She doesn't have
So
to.
she's on the same level with her husband.
Yeah.
She married a Kohen.
Right. She's the same level of husband as long as she's married to him. Okay. That's the.
And he can't demand it of her.
That might be mashkana evet, mashkana isha kana bailo, but the Gemara is not dealing with that issue over here. We're assuming the case where he's not makbid. Because they said, "I'm ochel truma shayu eats truma unintentionally." Mishalim keren l'bailim, he pays the keren to the owners. The chomesh to mitzvah, and the chomesh goes to wherever he wants. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara. Lo ispiko, 3 lines before the Mishnah on Lamed Beis and Beis. Lo ispiko l'shay machin is garsha. It is an unlucky girl. Right? She ate the truma before she got married. And she got married. Then she didn't get to pay until she was divorced. She got divorced already. Isa, what's the halacha in that case? Isa chamela, come and see. Iloya kama meiser shema einan shalah. Any meiser which she accumulated of any tevel, this is going according to Tanishlo hurmu kamisha hurmu damyan. Any time a Kohen gets tevel, so it's as if he acquired the trumas of meiser, trumas in it, because matanos which have not yet been lifted, as if they lifted. So if she had several meisers, they're hers. So here too, let's say that she should get to keep the principal. Why? It's true she never designated the principal, but since she could have, so therefore let her keep the principal, even though actually she never set it aside. Says more, that's different. Tama maisus musuyamin. There, it's talking about a case where there's specific tangible stuff which is going to be meiser. At the very least, the tevel's in front of you. You know, this is where the meiser is coming from. But here, she didn't designate anything which she's going to use to make this payment. So therefore, how can you say that she's zoich in the principal? In other words, in order for her to be zoich in the principal, while she's married to Mr. Cohen, she had to have had something which was designated to be the chulin from which she's going to take the principal, but she never made a designation. She never made a designation, so therefore it cannot be considered as if she actually set something aside, and therefore after she gets divorced, she cannot say, well, I'll keep the payment for myself. She has to give the payment to another Kohen. Madami lo, what is this similar to? Pitre chamoirin. It's similar to to firstborn donkeys. So the way the Rambam learns this is, I'm not sure exactly what the similarity is, but the way the Rambam learns this is that an heir who inherited Peter Chamor gets to keep the Peter Chamor for himself. Right? We said that, not the Peter Chamor, the goat, right? An heir, we said if you inherited from your grandfather as a Kohen, right, a Peter Chamor which has to be redeemed, so when you redeem with the goat, you get to keep the goat yourself. Because there you inherited something specific. But here, she didn't have anything specific. So she didn't have anything specific during the time she was married to Mr. Cohen, so therefore she doesn't get to keep the principal here after she gets divorced. What does she have to do? She has to set aside principal and chomesh and give it to some other Cohen. Okay? Says the Gemara, the Mishnah Halacha base. Hamachil, now here we're dealing with a louse. Louse. Not the human variety. Hamachil es Paulav es orchav truma. You gave your workers and your guests truma, but they weren't kohanim. Hu mishalim es hakeren. You, the balabas, the host, you pay the keren. V'hem mishalim es hachomesh. You know, this is a right against you, I think. And they pay the fifth, Divrei Rabbi Meir. Sounds like it's a kapara, because otherwise, why are we constant them in this case? Yeah, it sounds like it's a kapara. They've got to pay both. They have to pay the carrot and the chomesh. However, interestingly enough, he pays them the value of their meal, which is strange. And I was going to ask, why is it pay the value of the meal? They ate. They ate something awesome, but they ate, so why does they have to pay them the value of the meal? So Gemara is going to discuss that.
This is all, they didn't know what they would...
They weren't, no, they were all shogeg, right.
So why are they being any kind of...
Aveira b'shogeg is also Aveira. Right? That's by Truma. That's true, okay, he'll burn. But they have to get kapar as well. So it says, the bottom line is, Rabbanan say that they pay the Keren v'chomesh. I'm sorry. Rameir says he pays the Keren and they pay the Chomesh. And Chachamim say they pay the Keren and Chomesh. Well, let me start over again. Rameir says he pays the Keren, but the owner host pays the Keren and they pay the Chomesh. Right? Rabbanan say they pay both the Keren and Chomesh, but they get reimbursed for the meal. Ultimately, what's the nafkamina? It seems to be 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. What? Well, the Gemara doesn't know that yet. But the Gemara is assuming that it's both the same thing, right? So what's the difference between the two opinions? Ultimately, what's going on is he's paying for the meal, and they're paying for the chomesh. Both, according to both of them. So Rabbi Meir Mishalmin, Rabbi Meir Mishalmin. What's the difference between the two opinions? I'll tell you, the difference is very little. The truth is, the difference is who's responsible for the meal itself. Rameir Amar Ikar Suuda L'Baal Bayis. Rameir says the primary Suda is for the Baal Bayis, and Rabbanan Amrei Ikar Suda L'Polim. Rabbanan say the primary meal is for the Poalim. So the truth is, there's very little difference between the two of them. The only difference between Rameir and Chachamim is that Rabbi Meir holds that the primary meal is the responsibility of the Baal Bayis, the host, and therefore he's got to pay the full keren of whatever they ate to the Kohanim. Rabbanan say the primary meal is for the workers, meaning they have to pay the keren. If there's any discrepancy between the keren, what the value of the food consumed was, and what the value of the suda is, so then that the Baal Bas is an advantage.
That, I think, is the key distinction, because Demei Suda does not mean what they ate. It's the value of
a standard meal for a worker,
exactly.
Right? In other words, let's say a worker. It's understood that workers get meals worth. They get chveis. They get meals worth $5, and this meal is worth $7.50, right? So then there would be enough community between Rameir and Rabbanon. According to Rameir, the Baal Bayit, the meal is the host's responsibility. So it makes a difference if 750, if it's 750, the carrot is 750. Makes a difference that the obligation is 5. As long as the expenditure here and the value of the meal is 750, the Baal Bas has to pay 750. According to Rabbanon, however, no. The truth is that the meal is the responsibility of the people who ate it. I should say the Karen, be more precise. The responsibility of people who ate it, which 750 is the responsibility of the workers. The Baal Bas has to give them a meal, yes, but he only has to give them a $5 meal. The fact that he gave them an extra $2.50, that's the Po'alim's problem. So therefore, the bottom line is they pay $7.50 plus the Karen Chomesh $7.50, and he only pays them $5. Okay, that's nafkamina. Reish Lakish Amar Tfeilo Beineo. Reish Lakish says the truth is that whatever the value of the Karen is, the Karen is. The difference is, and the Karen, I should say, he doesn't. Reish Lakish doesn't see a distinction between the value of the meal as a Suda and the value of the meal as Karen. They're both the same. However, what about the mustard? The mustard, the condiments. He brings down here the vinegar and the side dishes, the cully. I don't know exactly what cully is, but so I guess some toasted grain, the French fries. So the question is, who has to pay for the side dishes? They're not a primary concern in the meal. The condiments is really a better example from our perspective, modern perspective. Who has to pay for the condiments? Condiments not part of the meal. So according to Meir Tfeilo Baal Bais. Meir says the whole meal is viewed as the Baal Bosses, even the condiments, right? Rabbanan Amrei Tfeilo Po'alim. And the Rabbanan say no, the condiments, or I guess the trips to the salad bar, all that kind of stuff that the Po'alim pay, because that is additional above and beyond what the Baal Bais' primary responsibility is. Okay? Ravo b'shem Reish Lakish. The name Reish Lakish said, what is this analogous to? It's an interesting analogy. I sell you an object. Whoops. Turns out it wasn't my object to sell you. I have to make you, since you paid me money, I have to find you another object in order to complete the sale. Right? So, I think that's the case here. This is, it seems like this is a brisa. It seems like there's a brisa somewhere. So, yeah. So Reish Lakish says that this brisa about mocher chevetz chaver, again, it's not clear where this is coming from. This brisa mocher chevetz chaver means if I sell you something and it turns out it's not mine, I have to give you something in instead. So to here, since the Baal Bas gave them, going to gave them, well, this is going to Rabbi Meir, right? Since the Baal Bas gave them the entire meal plus the tefillah, so therefore it's the Baal Bas who has to pay the Kohanim not just for the meal but also for the condiments. In other words, the Baal Bas gave them the whole spread. So the condiments are not an essential component of the Suda, it doesn't matter. That sounds like that case over there. I gave you, so I represented something as being mine and sold it to you on that basis, and it turned out to be a lie, right, a falsehood, so I have to make full restitution for whatever I represented to you. So to here I have to make full restitution for whatever I represented to you.
Except that the condiments were not truma, were they?
What?
Were they also truma?
Yeah. No, we're talking about the old truma, right. Yeah. What condiments? Ketchup, mustard, whatever is made with truma. Okay? Iluk Reish Lakish is Amar Nicha. If they're going in Reish Lakish, that's good. Okay, makes sense. Being Rabbi Yochanan, but according to Rabbi Yochanan, Amar Ikar Suda Beineo. Wait a minute. Rabbi Yochanan said the difference between is between Rameh and Rabbanon is who has to pay for the distinction between what he's chayev, what as to give as a meal, right, the $5 meal, or does he have to pay for the 750 Karen, right? So according to Rabbi Yochanan, how do we understand this brisa? Who's going this brisa going like? Because this means that you have to give full value, right? So who's that going like? So it says Mark Rabbi Meir Isamar. It's going like Rabbi Meir. Now in retrospect, let me modify what I said a moment ago. When Rabbi Avo brings this price in the name of Reish Lakish, I think it can work out both according to Rabbanan and Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbi Yochanan, the price can only work out according to Rabbi Meir. Let me explain. According to Reish Lakish, the difference between Rabbanan and Rabbi Meir is only the condiments. But the whole meal itself, that, for sure, everybody agrees. The whole $7.50, that for sure the Baal Bayis has to pay. So therefore, this price could work out according to Reish Lakish, both according to Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan. Because condiments are literally icing on the cake, right? So therefore, that could be above and beyond. And when it says here, Chayav L'hamid Lo Mikcho, if I represented something to you, and sold you something based on it was mine, turn out it's not mine, I have to make full restitution. Yes, full restitution, but who says condiments? Who says the other trip to the salad bar you took? That I might not have to make restitution for. So this statement, if it's like Reish Lakish, it can be going both like Rabbi Meir and Rabbanan. However, according to Rabbi Yochanan says that according to Rabbanan, you don't have to give more than $5, right? According to Rabbanan, all you pay for, all the Baal Bayis pays for, in any event, is a minimal meal, right? Whatever the standard going rate is, right? Not for the full meal. So therefore, that can't be going like this price, because this price is saying you have to give fully what you represented, and that would be a $7.50 meal, because you represented the entire $7.50 meals belonging to you. So that's why the Gemara says that according to Rabbi Yochanan, this price could only be going like Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir is the one who says you have to pay the full $7.50, like Rabbanan say you only have to pay the $5. This price is not going to work out. Okay, so again, according to Reish Lakish, who says the machlokas on the condiments, this price would be going both like Rabbanan and Rabbi Meir. The question is whether condiments are integral or non-integral. But according to Rabbi Yochanan, this price can only be going like Rabbi Meir, who says you pay for the full meal. Okay? Kraimeri said another interpretation of the Mishnah, Shvach Suda Beinehon, that there's a major difference between Rabbanan and Rabbi Meir. He's saying the difference is the quality of the meal. What is that? He made an agreement with them. He's going to give them teglach. I think it's called in Yiddish. Teglach are honey with dough, right? So the honey is not susceptible to truma, right? What?
Something like that.
Whatever. You get the idea. The honey is not susceptible to truma because honey is made from bees. Well, not from bees, but doesn't grow on the ground, right? The grain is susceptible to truma. So he made agreement to give them duvshane chulin. This honey cookie made of chulin. The chilan duvshane truma, and he gave them duvshane truma. So in that case, he says the way he explains here on the bottom is that the dough itself would be worth $5. Okay, I'm just taking figures at random. The dough itself was worth $5, but it's mixed in with honey, then it's worth $15, right? Because the honey enhances the dough to such an extent that it's dramatically more expensive. So then, in that case, you would say that let's see. According to Rabbi Yochanan, I guess according to Rabbi Yochanan, you'd pay. According to Rabbi Meir, you'd pay. Oh, okay, like this. I think it's the opposite now. I'm making this up because now I realize I didn't understand when I was preparing it. But let's see if this works. That they were supposed to get a meal which was worth $15, right? But the quantity only lost $5, right? Because the dough itself was only worth $5. So avade, the quantity only got $5. Well, let me take $4. The dough was worth $4. The quantity only got $4 plus a chomesh, which is $5, right? 4 and 1 is 5. So that's all the Kohanim are going to get. The shaila is, what do they get reimbursed for? So they get reimbursed to make shvach sudasan. They get reimbursed $15. So that's in this case, according to Rabbi Avo and name Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina, actually Rabbanan are more machmir than Rabbi Meir on the Baal Bais. Because according to Rabbi Meir, the Baal Bais doesn't pay them anything. He just gives the $5 to the Kohanim. What the Kohanim lost, the value of Truma. Right? Because that's what the Kohanim lost. That's the Karen. But that's according to Rabbi Meir. I'd say according to Rabbi Meir, that's according to Rabbi Meir. According to Rabbanan, however, who say that who knows in land the Mesu Dasan, that means they have to give to the Kohanim, the people who ate the Palim and the Orchim, they have to give to the Kohanim how much? $5. But what does the Baal Bas have to give them? $15. Because that's what he promised them and they didn't get it. Okay? So it actually comes out, we said, according in the way we explained in Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish's way of learning the Mishnah, so actually Rabbanan had the Baal Bais pay less. Right? Because according to Rabbanan, according to Rabbi Yochanan, they give the Baal Bais give the workers give $7.50 plus a chomesh, and the Baal Bais only gives $5 plus a chomesh. No, not even plus a chomesh. No chomesh, right? Just $5 to the workers or to the guests, right? And according to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Reish Lakish, the workers have to pay for the keren and chomesh of the meal plus the condiments, and all the Baal Bais reimburses them is for the meal minus the condiments, and of course no chomesh. So in both cases, the Baal Bais gets off paying less. But according to Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina's pshat, then the Baal Bais actually just pay a lot more, because the other Rabbanan, because according to Rabbanan, they pay the $5, which is the loss of Truma, but they get paid by the Baal Bais, the full value of this Choshva Michael they were supposed to get, they get paid $15.
Even though it wasn't Truma.
What?
There wasn't Truma that...
right. So now the Gemara asks the obvious question. The Gemara asked, finally, the bottom of Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, the last two words, V'lo kvar ochlu. So why do they have to pay the $50? So why do they get to make Suda? So says the Gemara, V'lo kvar ochlu. Command Omar Tfolin Nafshe Shlodem Chayse Bohem. There's an opinion which holds that a person eats tevel, it's repugnant to him. So therefore, retroactively, they didn't enjoy their meal. So they didn't enjoy their meal. They feel such a sense of repulsion at their meal. That's why they have to be reimbursed fully for the meal, which is part and parcel of their wages. Okay? Interesting svara. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah. Hagoyne Truma. V'lo achala. This is the fourth line in the Mishnah, on halacha base. Hagoyne Truma v'lo achala. Somebody who steals Truma and didn't eat it. B'shayin tashlumei kefil. He pays double to make Truma for the Truma which he stole. Achla, if he ate it, B'shalim shnei kronim, he pays double plus a chomesh, right? Because a thief always pays double, the kefil. Keren v'chomesh min achulin, the keren v'chomesh which he pays from a chulin, and keren, and then that has to be given actual food stuff. The keren to make Truma, and the additional keren that he can give as money, because that's restitution for theft. It doesn't be given in foodstuffs. It can be given in money or in any kind. Going to have trumas hektish v'achala. If you stole truma which belonged to hektish and then you ate it, b'shalim shnei chomashim, you pay two chomashim, one to the kohanim and one to hektish, for keren and one principal. Why not kefil? She'ein be'hektish tashlumei kefil. If you steal from hektish, you don't pay kefil. It's Gemara and Baba Kama. Okay, let's go back to the Gemara. Gone up Trumas Hektish. Well, let me give him a base right at the top, right? So you don't have a header, but I have a header. Okay, we're in the second line. Stole the Truma Hektish. Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai said, "Let's start in Himas Nisa." The Mishnah should be read in two different ways. In other words, it means to include a chiluk, which is not the dichotomy, which is not explicit in the Mishnah. How so? Yesh bo kazayis vein bo shavar putu. Let's say you steal this trumas hektish, and there is a kazayis, but there's no pruta. So kazayis is the shiur of stealing truma, but a pruta is the shiur of meila behektish. So if there's a kazayis and there's no pruta, Yerushalmi l'shevet, then you give the full payment to the shevet, to the tribe. Yesh bo shaver pruta ve'en bo kazayis. Let's say it does have a shaver pruta, but it doesn't have a kazayis, so there is a milah, but there's no theft from the shevet. Then Yerushalmi l'kodesh, you give the full payment to kodesh. What about yesh bo kazayis v'yesh bo pruta? It's got both. It has both a kazayis and a pruta, right? So Shimon bar B'Shem Rabbi Yonasan said, Mishalim l'kodesh. You still only make one payment. The Keren Chomesh goes to the kodesh. Rabbi Yochanan Amar Mishalim l'shevet. Rabbi Yochanan says you pay the Keren Chomesh to the tribe. Rabbi Zera said, why is this? Why don't you pay twice? So Rabbi Zera said it's Gzeres HaKosav. So Gzeres HaKosav, each kiyochal kodesh bishkoga. If a person eats kodesh bishkoga, then Yosaf olav chamishiso, he adds its chomesh on it. L'mokom sha'keren mahalech sham hachomesh mahalech. Wherever the keren goes, that's where the chomesh goes. From that we learn also, essentially, that there's only one keren and chomesh. Okay, so it says here chamishiso means there's one chomesh, and wherever the chomesh goes, the keren goes, and therefore they have a machlokes that it should only go to one of the two locations, which of the one of the two domain claims, not both, which one is machlokes. Kahana mar mishalim shnei chomoshim. Kahana says no, you pay two chomoshim, chomesh l'shevet v'chomesh lehekdesh. You pay a chomesh to the tribe and a chomesh for the hekdesh. You have to pay for both. Okay. Now the way we paskin, how do we paskin? Don't say. It's up in the machlokas. Rambam doesn't paskin this one. So we don't know. Shem hekdesh tashlumei kefel. So it's a three machlokas. Where you steal truma of hekdesh and it has a pruta and a gazayis, do you pay to one and not the other? And which one? Or do you pay to both? Okay? Open-ended question. Shein b'hekdesh tashlumei kefel, be the may we know is no by tashlumei kefel by hekdesh, to see v'shleim shnaim l're'eu, to your buddy, below the hekdesh. Okay? Not the kodesh, there is no tashlumei kefel to hekdesh. Let's go back to the Mishnah again. Back to Lamed Beis and Beis. Ein Mishalmin. The third to last line in the Mishnah. Ein Mishalmin min leket min shicha and peah. You cannot pay from leket, shicha, and peah and hefker. In other words, when you're making restitution, you have to give from bona fide chulin. Bona fide chulin, which has all trumas of meiser taken off of it. This is never susceptible to trumas of meisers. Leket, shicha, peah, and hefker are all exempt from trumas of meisers. Furthermore, v'lomi meiser rishon shenit lo trumaso, not from meiser rishon from which the truma was taken. If you're a Levi, you can't make restitution from meiser rishon, right? Even though truma was taken off of it, and has the din of chulin vis-a-vis the Levi. V'lomi meiser sheni v'heklish sheniftu, nor from meiser sheni heklish which are redeemed, even though now they have a din of chulin, since they once meiser. Shein hekdesh podes hekdesh divrei meir. Something which was once hekdesh cannot redeem other hekdesh divrei meir. But Chachamim permit in these. The question is what in these means. So we have machlokas on this. Let's go back to the Gemara. Reish Lakish Amar. We are now where? The last four lines. The last four lines of Lama Gimel Beis. Reish Lakish Amar al tartin achronaisa. It's only on the last two cases that Rabbanan argue and permitted, meaning Meiser Rishon and Meiser Sheni and Hekdesh Niftu. Why Lama Shiesh Bem Zikos Trumas Meiser? Because they were once in the parsha of Truma Meiser. In other words, you have to take something which had been rectified vis-a-vis Trumas Meiser and give that to a Kohen. So ever since these were part of the Truma Meiser rectification process, they are liable to serve as raw material for restitution. However, Leket Shichon Peah Ein Bem Zikos Truma Meiser. They were never susceptible to Truma and Meiser. So therefore, they're not susceptible to. Oh no, it's a question. Sorry. Leket shichapeim b'mstikos truma meiser. Leket shichapeim not were they not susceptible to truma meiser? What do you mean? Until they became leket shichapeim, they were susceptible. They weren't leket shichapeim until they became forgotten. So until then, they were susceptible. So it says Marotai about case el ben shiraso parrot as it was falling out of your hands, it became parrot as you were harvesting it. It fell out of your hands. Or leketabe, and then it became parrots if it's grapes, or leket if it's other grain. V'shechas komos, where you actually forgot the standing grain, or peas komo, where you designated peas, standing grain in your field. We're talking about these cases, and therefore to talk about those cases. So that's why it was never susceptible to trumas u'maisos, and that is why it is completely exempt, and that is why it can't be used to make the restitution. Okay, let's go on. Lam down off at the top. Doesn't this resolve Chilfoi's question? By the way, Chilfoi is called the Bavli Ilfa, and he was a friend of Rabbi Yochanan's. The Chilfoi asked, Leket b'neshira maushi kadosh. As leket slips out of your fingers, is that when it becomes leket or when it hits the ground? So here we see it must be as it slips out of your fingers. Why? Because otherwise there was a moment when it's susceptible to trumas u'maisros. After it was harvested, before it became leket. So here we see it's as you're slipped out of your ground, as it slips out of your fingers. Rabbi Yochanan, v'tanina leket. Rabbi Yochanan says, it says leket. In other words, it doesn't become leket until it hits the ground. So if that's the case, although this is not explicitly more, the Kafanoki explains that when Rabbanan argue, they argue in the whole Mishnah. And they mean leket doesn't become leket till it hits the ground, and therefore was susceptible to trumas u'maisos at one time. True, it then became exempt. But since it was at one point in the realm of becoming trumas u'maisos, or having trumas u'maisos taken off it, before it became leket, therefore Rabbanan argue in the whole Mishnah. And they say any of these substances can be used in order to make valid restitution to a kohen for having eaten truma. Okay? So, you can say it's anything. That pay in our Mishnah is talking about payah when you forgot to take it when it was connected to the ground, you gave it after it was severed from the ground. In which case it's also susceptible to trumas u'maisros. And payah they also argue on. Rabbi Yochanan therefore patul al kulhen. Rabbi Yochanan therefore said Chachamim are matir in all the cases in the Mishnah. They say everything in the Mishnah was susceptible at one point in some fashion to truma and meiser, and therefore it can be used to make restitution on individual trumas and meisers.
Even hefker.
Even hefker, it became hefker afterwards. In other words, it didn't become hefker when it was. It has to be a case where it became hefker after it was harvested. Not before it was harvested, because then the taka would be exempt, and he couldn't use it to make restitution. So it has to be right. Shemitah we're going to learn. Shemitah year stuff you can't use to make restitution. Very good. Right, that's correct. Okay, that's the next Mishnah. Rabbi Lezer Omer, halacha gimel. Getting the hang of this, huh? Rabbi Lezer says, "V'shalmi mimin al sheino mino." Amazing statement. He said you can make restitution from stuff which is from dissimilar stuff. And the Gemara is going to explain what it means. As long as you take from the better stuff and make restitution on less good stuff. It has to be the same type. Since it has to be the same type, if you wait squash of Erev Shemitah, you can't make restitution from a squash of Shemitah, right? It's not either because it's not yours. Right, or it's also, whatever the case may be, because then you can't take another min, because you need min b'mino, right? So you have to wait for squash and motzoi shvius, v'yishalim bohem, and you have to pay with them. Mimakom she Rabbi Lezer mekel, from the same pasuk from which Rabbi Lezer learns his kula, Rabbi Shomra Yikim Machmir from there Yikim learns his chumrah. Shem it says, Menasan es ha-kohen es ha-kodesh. You give the kohen the holy stuff. Kol shuroy leosos kodesh, diver Rabbi Lezer. Anything can be kodesh. Anything which can make kodesh, that's valid. It doesn't have to be the same stuff you ate. Rabbi Akiva Meir Nasa Kohen is a kodesh. Give the kohen that which is kodesh, kodesh achal, meaning that which you ate, meaning that which originally was kodesh, but that's be mean b'mino. Okay, it says Gemara. How does this work? Ochel yerek, according to Rabbi Eliezer, you ate vegetables. You pay dates, figs. Grogros, you ate figs. Tomorrow you pay with dates. As long as you're getting something more expensive, we don't care. That's fine. Okay, major kiddush. Okay. What if you ate bikurim? Bikurim is the same as truma. Once bikurim is supposed to be given to the Kohen, and you ate them, it's the same like eating truma. What do you pay? If you ate grapes, pay wine. Again, min b'shein amino. Zaytim, you ate olives, shalom shemen, bring olive oil. Ochel challah. What if you ate challah, which is also like truma, right? Can you pay instead of giving dough? Can you pay from grain which is not yet a third grown? It's interesting halacha which we haven't seen yet, but fruit which is not a third grown, even though it's exempt from trumas and maisos, is chayiv and challah. So really the question is according to Rabbi Akiva, because it's min b'mino. It is the same dough and grain are the same min. The question is though, is this similar enough or not similar enough? And then what doesn't answer, of course.
What is this Paris we're talking about? That must be grain that's growing?
Yeah. Challah, because challah.
Yeah, I understand.
Challah is Paris.
Usually the term is such strange.
Yeah, here it's grain. Right. Here, even though it's generic, here it of course means grain.
They're derivatives of each other, so why wouldn't it be considered?
Because it might be too unripe. It's not to do this because of its unripe nature. That's why. The only reason why. More never resolves it.
That's also Paris Shaloy is deemed to be like a not worth a lot. It's a low level.
Right. Well, you have to give the value anyway, right? It's like you might have to give more actually, but you have to give the full value.
We're putting a low value on challah.
Right. Challah is a minute amount. It's very small. Okay. If you ate bikurim, can you make restitution with stuff which is still connected to the ground? After you designate bikurim, it says you go out to the field and you wrap a little string around what you want to designate as bikurim. So maybe just like you designate bikurim when they're still attached to the ground, you make restitution with stuff which is still attached to the ground. The more never resolves the question. Okay, do you have this header? Okay, no header. Okay, but anyway, going back to the squash. Rav Shem Rabbanin Tamon Rabbi Am, in the name of the rabbis of Chutzlar, it said, so Mismer Shem Mishalmi Peres Chutzlar. You can't pay from Peres Chutzlar because otherwise bring squash in, drink Shemitah from Chutzlar. I feel Tamer Shalmi. No, you can even say that you use Peres Chutzlar in order to make restitution for Truma. Mas Nisa, our mission say about Achlo Hiti Rabbi Lavi Yerek Chutzlar. We said in Masech Shemitah that they all used to not be permitted to bring a fruit from Chutz La'aretz during Shemitah into Eretz Yisrael because of Tumas Eretz Ha'amim. So this is after Rebbe permitted. Lo amarta l'kishun shein peiros iser. What it sounds here, it sounds in the Mishnah that only squash you can't make restitution with Shemitah squash because it is peiros iser, because it's v'sfichim shvius. It grows when it grows wild, it's prohibited. Midrabanan or midaraisa, according to Manar Tzvichim is daraisa, but it's prohibited. Avodavish peiros heter, but if it's peiros which is mutter, meaning let's say oranges, apples, stuff which grows on trees, which is no problem with sfichim, so then you could make restitution for peiros shvius, right? So avodavish peiros heter low, says more low. No, of course you couldn't. I'm not sure what your girsa is here. What's your girsa here? Okay, I have an additional 5 words. Low. I feel with peiros heter nami. You can't even use permitted fruits during Shemitah restitution, like Dr. Spadel said before. Shemata Omer Kain, if you're doing that, lo nimtza lo keach lo kardom mi peiros shvius. It's as if you're buying an axe with Shemitah fruit. In other words, you're doing schera with Shemitah fruit. And doing schera with Shemitah fruit is prohibited. So it's not exactly what you said. You said before, which I liked, and we don't see it explicit here, is that Shemitah is not susceptible to Trumas and Maasros. So it should be because of that. It should not be usable to make restitution, because it has to be something which was b'teiras trumas and ma'asos at some point in its history. The Gemara is giving a different reason. The Gemara is saying to make restitution brings down the issue of doing schara with peiros shmita, which is forbidden. So I'm not sure. Maybe the Gemara chose one of 2 reasons. Yeah, that's what he answers. He Taka says that the Kavanok, he says Sarach here. It's not, you can't use it because it's not said L'Trumas Righteous. So he says there are two reasons, and the Gemara only took one reason. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening. Pick up again on Tuesday.
Couple of things.
There's a covenant that Tal never ceases. There's no dew always materializes at night. Rather, the blanket was much wetter than the surrounding ground. And that too can be taken to be a metaphor, not a metaphor, but an illusion. That Kosh Baruch was telling you there's no such thing as Am Yisrael not having merit. No such thing. Am Yisrael always has merit. Perhaps it's very little. But just like dew never ceases, so too Am Yisrael never ceases having merit. Then, that was the first miracle, and that wasn't so miraculous for two reasons. A, the ground was also wet. Just not as wet, and B, the poskim, the Mepharshim point out, it's natural that a blanket is going to get wetter than the ground around it. So now the Gidon said, let's try it the other way around. Vayomer Gidon Elokim, Gidon said to God, Al yichar apcha bi, don't get upset at me, Vadabra chapam, and I'll try again. Anasano, and I'll try again. Rakapam, but this time should be the other way around. Bagiza yenachorev. The blanket should be dry. Elagiza levado. Va'kol oretz yeto. And on the rest of and on the ground there should be dew. Now that's the opposite. And here the Malbim says the symbolism is that even if I don't have merit, will you save Am Yisrael for their merit? And later on, in fact, we're going to see at the end of the war, at the beginning of the war, Gidon does almost everything single-handedly. At the end of the war, Am Yisrael does much more without Gidon's intervention. We're going to see that in the next parak. So what's going to be, will you do that? And here, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Taka can make the blanket completely dry. So this is indeed what happened here. The second miracle, Vayas Elokim came b'laylahu, God did it on the second night. And it was dry only on the blanket. And on the land, all of the land surrounding it, there was dew. Okay. So the next morning, Yerubal got up early. By the way, we don't know if this happened in I guess it's 2 nights, yeah. Okay, so now we're dealing two nights later, 2 mornings later. Vashkem Baal, Yerubal Gidon. Gidon, who's Yerubal, got up. B'chol Amasharito, and all the people were with him. Vayachanu al Ein Charod, and they camped on Ein Charod. Machne Midyan Yolam Mitzafon, and the Midianites were up north. Migiva Samora, they were northerly of Giva Samora Ba'emek in the valley. This pasuk is laden with symbolism. It says, Gidon here is called Yerubal. And they camped by Ein Charod. If you take a look very quickly at Pasuk Gimel, we'll come back to it in a minute, he says, Mi Yorei v'Choreid. Right? The parallel here between Yerubal and Yorei, and Charod and Choreid. But that's not all. It says that here the Midianites were camped Mitzafon Migivas HaMoreh. They were north of Givas HaMoreh. Givas HaMoreh, the Targum here translates Migivaso de Mistakayo, the hill of the scouts, where they used to gaze to see what's going on. Well, way back when, in Parshas in the Sefer Bamidbar, one of the places where Balak took Bilam is to the Tzofim. What's it called there? State Tzofim. And the state Tzofim, the Targum there says, Chakal Sachusa, the place to gaze as well. So there's a parallel here, that these Midianites were in the place of Tzofim, and Bilam also was taken to Tzofim. So obviously there's a correlation, which is of course that Bilam's whole power, and Midian's power, was to gaze at Am Yisrael to find the weak points, right? Their re'iyah, their gazing, was to find where they could create strife between God and Am Yisrael by finding the weak points of Am Yisrael, the stress points, so to speak. How does Am Yisrael correct that kind or fend off that kind of threat? By using the power of re'iyah, of gazing, for the right purpose. And the right purpose of gazing is to be ro'eh, to see, to have a vision, to have a perspective, to have a clarity of perspective on the right things. And what's the right kind of re'iyah? We mentioned this before. Yiras Hashem. Right? Re'iyah should lead to Yiras Hashem, which is, of course, Yira and Charada l'shem shamayim. To have fear and to have Charada, to have trembling for the sake of heaven. So I believe that the Yori and Chorei and Pasuk Aleph here connote the antidote for the Givas Hamoreh, for the type of vision which was represented by Midian. And we're going to see that here throughout the parasha. That's the Kol Bidei Shamayim Chutz Mi'Yirah Shamayim. That was the antidote for Midian. Vayomer Hashem el Gidon, God said to Gidon, Rav Amar Shaitach, you got too many people with you. There's no good. Why? I can't give Midian over to so many people's hands. Penispora la Yisrael, because the Jews might then take pride and say, Lemor Yodi Oshioli, that it's my hand which saved me. The Jews were still not big maminim. We never saw any mass tshuva movement here. It ain't happening. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch said, I have to make something which is going to be pretty miraculous, which everybody's going to have to know that is clearly something which I HaKadosh Baruch Hu did. So you know what? Call out in the hands of in the ears of the nation. Lamar, tell them the following: Me or Reva Choreid, who's fearful, and this is a bad fear, right? Whose people? It says who has fearful. Pachadu b'tzion chotim. The Gemara says, if person's fearful, it means they're sinners. So those people who have raw bad year and bad charada, yashov, let them stand back. V'yitzbar, and in the morning they'll go home. Now the Malbim says, why are they going to go home in the morning? Because they're going to play a crucial role in the battle later on. Since they didn't go home till the morning, really they stayed behind. They stayed behind the lines, and they didn't go home, but they didn't participate in the first stage of battle. They'll participate in the later stage of battle. And God had that in mind. So Yashov, Yitzbar, in the morning they'll go back Mihar Gilad. Vayoshem Minah Mitzvim V'Shnayim. Oh, did I photocopy this? Sorry, next page of photocopy out of order. Vayoshem Minah Mitzvim V'Shnayim Esrim Elef Vayoshem Minah Esrim Elef V'Aseres Alfin Nishro. Oh, I made a mistake here. I read this wrong, so I have a whole note here which is based on a wrong reading. So I'm just going to skip my note here, which I thought was 22,000. All right, let's skip what I wrote there in the Pasuk base. So they were left with 20,000 left. V'aseres alofim nisharu, and 10,000 people were left over. No, I was right. Yeah, okay, that's 22,000. I didn't read it right. Okay, 22,000 is a very significant number. Now my note is good. 22,000 is a very significant number because it says, Ein hashgmarn in Babakanta Pei Gimel. Ein hashchina shore in 22,000 people me'am Yisrael. The Shechina rest in the minimum of 22,000 people. Right? Because it says, Shuv Hashem Rivavos Alfei Yisrael. Rivavos is 20,000. Alfei is 2,000. So 22,000 people left. It's a very significant number. So why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu cause 22,000 people to leave? I believe HaKadosh Baruch Hu was trying to make sure that they couldn't attribute anything to their superstitions. Because if these 22,000 people would say we're still left, they would say, the reason why we had the Yeshua is because we had this lucky number of 22,000. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu made sure 22,000 left. So that they're originally 32,000, which is also a very significant number, because in Kabbalah 32 represents a perfection of 22 plus 10. So first the 22 left. Then they were left with 10,000. That also is no good. Vayomer Hashem el Gidon Odam Rav. 10,000 is also a significant number. 10,000 we said several times before. 10,000 represents perfection, right? 5 digits. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida. God says, no good. Still, too big a number and too symbolic a number. Let's get rid of them. V'yomer Hashem al Gidon Odam Rav. Horedo Samal Amayim. Bring them down to the water. V'atzafenu l'chad sham, and they'll refine them for you. V'yar asher omar elecha zeh elech itach. Those who I say to you, they should go with you. Hu yelech itach. They'll go with you. V'chol asher omar elech, and those who I say ze lo yelech imach, they shouldn't go with you. They're not going to go with you. V'yorid asam el amayim, and he brought the nation down to the water. V'yomer Hashem el Gidon, Hashem said to Gidon, Kol asher yolok b'lushono min hamayim kasher yolok hakelev. Anybody who laps up the water like a dog, you have to go like this. They would take the water in their hand and lap the water from their hand like a dog, because you can't drink water like this. You can't cup your hand to your mouth and drink it. You have to lap it up with your tongue. So anybody who does that, tatzigo salavado, put him by himself. Anybody who bends down their knees and drinks directly from the water, put them by themselves. Those who licked with their hands were 300. 9,700 people, they bowed down on their knees to drink the water. Hashem said to Gidon, with those 300 people who licked, those are the ones I want. With them I'll save you. And I'll give me into your hands. The rest of them send home. Now 300 is very significant because we don't have the time to go into today. 300 in Chazal is always a number which represents bad things. 400 is good things. 300 is bad things. Maharal speaks about great length. Reb Tzadok, all over 300 represents bad things. So Kodesh Baruch Hu Dafka picked a number of people which is a superstitiously bad number, like the number 13. Hashem said, I Dafka want 300 people. Now, why the 300 people who licked and not the 9,700 who bowed down? So, first of all, it says here, Litzarif. It says, V'atzarfenu l'cha. And we know mitzvahs were given Litzarif b'nesabrios to refine individuals. So clearly, if a person bends down to drink, if he kneels, then it's not considered to be refined behavior. So these are the people who obviously were not shomer Torah mitzvahs properly, send them home. That's one pshat. The Rambam says those who kneeled and drank were lazy. If they weren't good warriors, if they weren't lazy, they would have drawn up the water in their hands. They wouldn't have kneeled down to drink. Rashi says that they kneeled down to Avodah Zarah. Why did they kneel? Because they were used to kneeling down to Avodah Zarah, and that's why they were sent home. They were idolaters. The Radak and Malbim say, amazing thing, they brought from Chazal, that they worship their own reflection in the water. So I guess what it means is why they worship their own reflection. They wanted to connect to their own powers as Tzelem Elokim, which is also Avodah Zarah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, the people who want to connect to their own powers as Tzelem Elokim, that's what they're worshiping, their divine nature. That's also Avodah Zarah. That's people who should be sent home. And they were sent home, period. The Malbim says the other guys were sent home in the morning. And in reality, they also participated in the battle, the first 22,000. These people, the Cholam Yelchu Ishlam Kamo, these people, all of them were sent home immediately. We don't want any Oydei Avodah Zarah with them participating in this battle. People Yereim, who are fearful because they did sins, they can participate. People of the Avodah Zarah, they have to be sent home immediately, and we have to go down.